You gave up a TV job to start a podcast in your basement. If that doesn't scream midlife crisis, I don't know what does.
It was Championship Sunday here in Indianapolis. What's the mindset then coming in as a defending champion?
I want to win. No, I want to win.
The young lady over my shoulder, Caitlin Clark.
Not the best looking guy. And I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say, Matt Randazzo was really good looking.
What has this last month, 2 months, 3 months been like for you? It's an important fan base for the Fighting Illini, is it not?
It is.
He turned 69 years young last week. You look good, Coach.
Oh, try it. Thank you.
Welcome to Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. We are here on a Tuesday here in the Quad Cities, Tuesday, March 11th. If you've been trying to watch the start of the show live, bear with me. We have finally made it. I think we are good and we are set to rock and roll. So thank everybody who's watching still on YouTube. I'm joining the new stream right now. We want to thank our everydayers. You guys have been fantastic. People watching the show every day. Getting close to 750 subscribers on YouTube. We thank you guys for doing that. X has been really, really good to us. We've had a lot of followers on X, and we hope that continues as well. A lot of good things to get to. Yesterday was not good, though. X going down in the morning on the first day of NFL free agency was dicey, to say the least. But we survived. The NFL survived. They're doing just fine. And we got a lot of good stuff to get to today. Of course, if you're watching on podcast platforms, we appreciate that. It's a great day outside. So when you get off work, download the show, jump out and get a run in, go work out, do all those kind of things, work in the yard a little bit. But make sure you're checking out Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. We appreciate it. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the platforms that you get them on, we should be there for you. So we appreciate you guys for doing that. Also today, we've got a lot of great sponsors for our show. And we're adding a few more coming up as well. But one guy who talked to me right when I went to go do this and said, I want to be that first sponsor. I want to do this, is my guy, James Ramirez, AKA Snoop. It's Snoop's birthday today. The best food in town, best chips and salsa, best Mexican food, all that kind of stuff. But if you know Snoop, you know he's a better person. He's got a huge heart. We appreciate Snoop for everything he's done for us. So happy birthday to Snoop. Snoop, I'll talk to you sometime today to wish you a happy birthday as well. Yesterday's show was great. Pat Anger, always fun on a Monday in the Quad Cities. Make sure you go check out Pat Anger. Tom Kakert talked about the Iowa basketball team, which we'll talk a lot about again today, and where they're at this season as they get ready to go to Indianapolis, a place that not too many people thought that the Iowa basketball team would be heading the last couple weeks. So Tom Kakert on yesterday's show. And then also we had a great coach's corner with Sean Taylor, with Henry Hall, and with Scott Hardison, talking high school athletics, high school basketball, especially in the state of Illinois. Of course, there was a situation on Friday night where a shot clock would have been necessary with Lanark Eastland and Pecatonica. Hats off to Lanark Eastland for a good strategy and knocking off the number one team in the state. But a great coach's corner with those three. Check that out. Plenty of good things to talk about there. Today, great show once again. We'll talk more Iowa basketball with former Hawkeye Nicholas Baer. Nicholas has joined us several times over the season to check things out and to talk Iowa basketball. Recently, Nicholas has been a little more vocal on social media when it comes to Fran McCaffery and the legacy I think he leaves. I don't know if he's defending, and we're going to talk to him here in a second, what's going on this season and all that kind of stuff. But eventually, when all's said and done with Fran, whether it's at the end of this season, whether it's years in the future, Fran will have a legacy, and it's interesting to see what that's like right now, what people are thinking about right now. So we'll talk with a guy that spent 5 years playing with Coach McCaffery, and then also, I think, a year as an assistant as well. So Nicholas Baer in a matter of moments. Also, Jim Mattson along to talk about Illinois basketball and the Big Ten tournament. And we'll talk a little Bears with Bobby Metcalf, former sports writer here in the Quad Cities, as we get a little bit of a later start here on a Tuesday in the Quad Cities. A couple of notes. Congratulations to Central DeWitt boys and Rock Falls boys. They lost last night, ending fantastic seasons. Both of them have had really good runs. Both of their head coaches have been on the show, so we appreciate both of them. awesome season. And it's weird because high school basketball in our area, in the Quad City area, it's officially over. No teams remaining as we head down the home stretch, but really good and fun stories this year when it comes to high school basketball in our area. Also this morning, the Illini announcing no spring football game. That's due to renovations at Memorial Stadium, but it's something that programs around the nations are starting to do a little bit more of. So we will we'll talk about that with Jim Mattson in a matter of moments, but we got a lot to get to, a great show today, and we are just getting started. So a tough start when it came to some technology, but we are rocking and rolling. And we're joined now by a very familiar face here in the Quad Cities, the Bear Cage, the one and only Nicholas Baer, former Bettendorf standout, former Hawkeye himself. I miss you, buddy. Like, we did this more often. I know you're busy, married man now, real job. I'm unemployed, hanging out in my loft. So I miss you. It's good to have you back on the show.
It's good to see you too, Dazzo. It's been too long. But yeah, it's always a pleasure to get back to Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. So thanks for having me.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you being here. We got a lot to get to. Because, when I had probably texted you on Friday and said, hey, let's do this again, let's get your thoughts on a lot of stuff, I didn't know what Monday would hold. I wouldn't know what Tuesday would hold. And that Iowa, it's a win and you're in for the Big Ten tournament, which is weird for you because when you were at Iowa, you played in the Big Ten tournament. It wasn't a thing. Let's talk about the game on Sunday first because they go to Nebraska. And Tommy Kakert said it yesterday. He went to cover it and it felt like a funeral. And he left with a celebration. You got to be proud of those guys and a really gritty, gutty effort against Nebraska.
Yeah, super excited for these guys. Go in, obviously kind of knowing what the stakes were. It could be the last game of the season if it doesn't go our way. So I thought a couple really impressive performances as well. I mean, obviously I think the standout one, Price, 16-11, big-time double-double. Peyton, 22-8, so Sanford boys came to play. Evan Browns with some contributions, and obviously our Quad City's very own Brock Harding hit 3 threes as well and being a contributor off the bench. So I think more than anything, I was just glad to see these guys kind of played with their hair on fire, played with a competitive spirit. I thought it could have been easy to kind of just throw in the towel and be done with the year with kind of how maybe the season has gone. But on the whole, yeah, really proud of these guys and excited to get a chance to watch them on Wednesday. We're still alive, Daz. We're still kicking.
Yeah, absolutely. Take me through the mindset of a player like that, because I don't know, you've been in situations where you win and go home and you win and you're done, and you rally around each other, I think, a little more. And that's what good coach teams do, good chemistry teams do. I don't know the best way to put it, but talk about that type of mentality and what it's like to have your back against the wall on a big stage like that.
I think, just to speak from personal experience too, this season can get pretty long, especially when you're not having the success that you want to have and the success that hopefully that this team wanted to have when the season started. So I think being able to stick together as a group like they did, I don't think watching the games, I don't think it's been a lack of effort, for maybe where they've come up short. I think, there's been a few other factors, but on the whole, I feel like every time they showed up, played hard, which has been great. And I think on the whole, it does kind of, bind you together, kind of us versus the world mentality a little bit. So, and I think you kind of saw that after the game. Those guys going out during Peyton's interview, kind of rallying around him and, happy to see him, as a leader of the team have some success. So, on the whole, it's a really difficult stretch of the season when you're not winning as many games as you want to be winning. But to kind of come out of Lincoln with a win, which honestly has been a place where we've struggled historically too. It hasn't been an easy place to get a win, which you'd think it might have been a little easier. So nice to kind of end the house of horrors there and get a win.
When you see that kind of stuff afterwards, and you mentioned and you saw Fran, I think Kaker told us, hugging every single player and what it meant to them. You get closer when times gets rough, don't you? When you're a basketball player, when you're on a good team.
Have to be. And especially, and that's something that coaches always preach, we're together, we're a unit, 5 guys out on the floor versus, 13, 14,000, however many were there in Lincoln. But I think that's the part that I've been impressed with and kind of has been a staple for all the coaches' teams, teams that stick together, they have, high character guys on the floor and on the team. So on the whole, really just happy for these guys. They get an opportunity to play in the Big Ten tournament, which is still a weird sentence to utter for sure. It's kind of got this soccer relegation style to see their season continue at least one more game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Nicholas Baer, former Hawkeye, joining us today on Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. Let's look ahead, and then I want to talk a lot of big picture stuff with you. But they go to the NCAA, or they go to the Big Ten tournament, an Ohio State matchup. I don't love the matchup on paper. I think there's better teams they probably match up better with. What do you see on Wednesday night? And I know like people are going to say they're not going to go there and win 5 games in 5 days, blah 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 blah. But it's not about that, is it? You have to go there with Wednesday in your mind first and then forget about everything else. So the matchup and then the mindset. What do you got?
Yeah, I think 2 things. I was also a little bummed by the, how the kind of tournament laid out. I think there was an opportunity. If Minnesota beats Rutgers, then you're playing Rutgers, like a pretty, a team with not as much to play for, and then you're playing a UCLA team for their first time in the Big Ten tournament, which could have landed a little bit better, but regardless, 5 games in 5 days, if they're going to make a deep run, is going to be a tall task. So I think for me, as I'm looking at this Wednesday game, obviously we played Ohio State once. They kicked our tail in Columbus earlier in the year, but I think the one thing like I would definitely have going from one coming off of a win, which is big time, but also, this team has nothing to lose. Ohio State's playing for a bubble spot. Like I've been in that position where you're on the bubble, you kind of feel that tension versus you're playing a team with really nothing to lose and plays with an air of freedom. So, for me, I would anticipate Iowa to play pretty freely, still kind of similar to last game, hopefully. So that's where I'm kind of looking at kind of like the game within the game of, how these teams are going to be matching up. But regardless, like got to get back in defense. Defensive transition was a killer last time against Ohio State. So I'm sure coach will have them ready. Ohio State has some good guards, but on the whole, I think the main thing is just playing freely, playing with nothing to lose, and having a chip on your shoulder too.
Nicholas, do you have a favorite Big Ten tournament moment for yourself? A game, a moment for you?
Yeah, whacking 5 threes against Illinois in the Big Ten tournament, going 5 for 6 and getting a chance to advance in the United Center was pretty cool. So I would say that one, like it was my senior year, so like that was at the time like we were pretty much thought we were in, but it's like you win this and you're definitely in. You're not messing around anymore. So to kind of go out, play in Chicago, I had all my family there, not too far down the road from the Quad Cities. So that one definitely jumps out to me for sure. Getting a chance to play against Illinois and a rivalry that way, but also had some success in kind of locking in our chances at the NCAA tournament. So that stands out. Senior year, I was a little sentimental towards the end of my career too.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicholas Baer joining us now on Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. Nicholas, it's an interesting fan base right now, and you know it. You've been around it, and you've been an Iowa fan for a long time. And I kind of jokingly say that I felt like half or more of the fan base were rooting against the Hawkeyes on Sunday than for the Hawkeyes on Sunday. It's just an interesting time. There's a lot of what ifs with goes on to the program, and people can have their opinions. And I wanted to have you come on because there's a difference between having opinions and what you want and maybe facts of what goes on. When you look at Fran McCaffery and 14, 15 years of doing this, obviously you played for him, boy, he's accomplished a lot of stuff that I think some people kind of forget because of the things they go through right now.
Yeah, I think there definitely is an element of kind of like recency bias with this, where the program is right now, which isn't all that uncommon. I can understand that. But I think when you look at his body of work as a whole, kind of where he took the program from where it started and kind of all the different accomplishments he's had, whether it's been, from developing, high-level players, win the Big Ten tournament title, and really providing an engaging format of basketball that people like to watch. I think that's definitely been, a lot of pluses. I think personally for me, where maybe some other folks might not have as much insight, is kind of being expected to do more with less as well. And that's not even just like within the NIL era. I think just from a resources perspective, and I'd also like to end any disillusion that players are now finally getting paid for the first time in the NIL era. Players have been getting paid, and obviously coach runs a pretty tight program. So I think that's kind of one area where maybe he doesn't get as much credit for being like running a really tight, top of the line program, top of class program. So, but on the whole, obviously I played for coach I was there for 5 years, obviously still connected to the program. So, really proud of the work he's done. I know some people are going to ding him for, some of the success or lack of success in March. But on the whole, I think when you look at his body of work, it's been a really successful, era. And right now, I think it doesn't necessarily feel that way when the program's in the state that it's in, unfortunately.
Obviously a tough couple years, especially this year as well. If you, and obviously you are a player, kind of talk about what that relationship is with Fran, because I've always talked about with people that like no one is a bigger cheerleader for his own players than Fran McCaffery. I think he compared to Jordan Bohannon to Steph Curry at a media day one day. And I love Jordan. I'm not being mean, but like he loves tremendous, outstanding athletic. He always talks highly about his guys. He's got your guys' back. Talk about the relationship that he has with his players.
Yeah, it's something that I think I've probably appreciated a little bit more post grad, like kind of seeing where maybe there's times where like opposing coaches are just throwing their players under the bus. Like, hey, this guy didn't show up today, right? So and so, he's got to shoot better. He's got to do better. Like, coach is never doing that in any press conference. I think one of the impressive things too, coach has been here whatever since like 14, 15 years now, whatever it is. Find me a former player who's got a qualm with him. Like, I think that's one of the things that I point to too. Like, all the former players support him, had a good experience with him as well. But I think the thing that kind of coach always told us is just trust your talent. Like, we trust you. We brought you here for a reason. Trust that you're, obviously good enough to play at this level, that you can make an impact. And at the end of the day, like, he was always somebody who was always super supportive of you being aggressive, of going out and, having the confidence to go out and make a play. So I think for me, that's carried over definitely in my area. Also, like, I think you look at this team too, like, still fighting, still scrapping hard. So I think that's always been kind of a calling part of coaches, is instilling confidence in his players. And I think that's definitely been an area of strength.
With your closeness with the program, and understandably so, when you hop on, God bless social media, God bless it. When you hop on these kind of things, how frustrated do you get? Because obviously you're hearing and you're reading things written about someone that maybe opinion-wise you might not agree with, but factually sometimes it doesn't add up as well. How frustrating is it for you as a former player sometimes?
Yeah, I think it is. I would say by and large, I don't comment a ton. I have recently for sure, which is fine. But I think kind of where I sometimes feel a duty or obligation of the program is sometimes sticking up for them when I know they're not going to be able to respond to things themselves. So I think right now, obviously, it's a little bit more of a critical moment for the program. But I think on the whole, like, I'm always happy to be kind of that representative and that voice for the program, to be able to shed a little bit more of a positive light as well. So it can be hard. I know you mentioned earlier, like, kind of like some fans maybe like not rooting, for Iowa, which I don't necessarily think is 100% true. But if anybody is, like, we don't get a higher draft pick if we lose a game. Like, there's no real incentive for us to, not want this team to do well. And I think at the end of the day, like, I always want to support these student athletes. I always want to support this program, obviously, because I'm close with it. But on the flip side, like, I've been there, man. Like, I've been there when we were, 14 and 19 and struggling, and what that season's like. And those seasons have been few and far between, but at the same time, like, wanting to be able to support the guys who are going through it right now, and hopefully can come out on the other side here with some more success in the Big Ten tournament.
Nicholas, you talked about, the biggest ding on Fran is March. And boy, I got into it the other day not into it in a negative way, but I started talking with Tom Kakert about it. I don't even think it was on air. We talked too much, so I think it was even just on the phone. And you go through like some of the scenarios that this team has been in and how close they've been. Jess Settles and I spoke. He was on the show a few weeks ago, and he talked about Tom Izzo and the struggles that he had until the Flintstones came through. He busted through with Mateen Cleaves. They win a national championship, and the rest is history. Fran hasn't gotten that Sweet 16, and you're an Iowa kid. You grew up as an Iowa fan. Mm-hmm. That's the one big thing that I think fans kind of go back to, but it's hard in the same sense. Just your thoughts on maybe that being the biggest thing that fans are having trouble getting over right now.
I think it's definitely going to be a measuring stick, right? Like, whether it's right or wrong, I think on the whole, like, that's definitely going to be kind of a primary measuring stick for really any college basketball program. I would say, it's been definitely a sticky spot for this program. I think there's been a couple instances you look back and, things maybe, panned out a different way. I think the criticism, I definitely like hear it and understand it. I think one thing I would point to is, especially in this moment of the program where maybe it's a little bit down, like, just even speaking from personal experience, obviously when we went 14-19, the following 5 years, made the tournament, had National Player of the Year, all Big Ten guys, consecutively throughout the program. So I think it's proven that coach can, like, get this program back to potentially where it needs to be or where it wants to be. But I think on the whole, like, yeah, it's difficult to kind of answer some of those March questions outside of there's, an element of fate, an element of, some fickle luck here and there. So it can be difficult, but at the same time, I think we've definitely had the rosters to and develop the right guys that had a chance to potentially win in March.
Absolutely. Tom and I were talking about it the other day as well, that Tennessee game. Do you still think about that damn game? And what a great game it was, first off, because you guys are right there first half, it was miserable and didn't look like you belonged on the court. And the second half, you look like the better team and goes to overtime. And do you think about that a lot? I know after the game, I remember talking to you after the game and how, rightfully so disappointed you were. Does that still bug you? Do you think about that game?
Matt, are you saying you didn't have a good time when we were down 25 in the first half? That wasn't a bucket of fun.
I wasn't loving it. I wasn't loving it.
I definitely do think about it, especially, obviously around this time of year for sure. But I think looking back on it too, like when we were down 25 at one point in the first half, Tyler Cook played like a man possessed, was phenomenal. Isaiah Moss was great. Joe Wieskamp hit some shots. I still think back to, I had a free throw rebound, kicked it out to Jordan for 3 to cut it to a 2-possession game. Like that was, a huge play that I always think about. And really for me, like getting a chance, I thought we got to overtime. Like, all right, we got here, got this far. Like there's a good opportunity for us to maybe steal this one. So I definitely do think about it. Like I think it's just another kind of, example or reminder where, these teams that Coach McCaffery's had, they don't give up by any means and kind of keep on playing. And, whether we're down 25 or up 25, still pedal to the metal regardless. So to answer your question, Matt, I definitely do still think about it 100%. But don't have any regrets about it. It was just like, we put everything out there and just came up a little bit short.
It was,
do you think about it?
No,
you and Tom.
Yeah.
Listen.
I went from like thinking about going home to thinking about where Iowa was going the next week so that I could plan the trip to go. And it was crazy. No, I remember that. It was, and I had a great seat, man. And I remember the kick out 3 to Bohannon. And it was, and those are the things you can go through and look at, like, that COVID year. I think Iowa was really, really good. That's a Sweet 16 team. I thought that group, the next year they lose to Oregon, another funky thing where they don't play their first game in the NCAA tournament and then they get beat. But like that group right there, I think, is a Sweet 16 team. One got taken away from COVID. The other was a wonky factor with COVID probably helping out Oregon and an Oregon team that probably is a bad matchup for Iowa. But I go through a lot of them because you look at this roster and you look at this program and you're like, how did they not get to a Sweet 16 with the guy? But each team's different. It's not an overriding theme. You know what I mean? It's not like it just every team was different and every situation was different, which I think is a big thing to keep in mind, because a lot of time people try to toss an umbrella over something that like this can't happen because of this. And each thing was weird and different. And I think in your guys' case, that year was a fantastic finish. You come back from 25 down and almost shock the world and win a game. Nicholas Baer joining us right now. Regardless of what happens with Fran moving forward, I'd love to get your advice, your thought process, because I always talk to people. My dad passed away, and I think maybe a month after, I had an iClub interview with Fran McCaffery, and I just was bumming that day. And we actually got done with the interview, and we got there early. And so it's just me and Fran, and I think my photographer, and he's like, hey, what's going on? And had an amazing conversation with the man, because I let him know, my dad passed away a couple weeks ago. It's been a rough go. And as genuine as a dude as you're going to find, I'll never forget that, because it helped me out a lot. Talk about Fran the man, because people see the red face, all that kind of stuff. They see the anger, but talk about Fran, the dad, the coach, the individual, the man that you've gotten to know a little more.
Yeah, no, I think for me, like I've had a chance to obviously see him, like my coach for sure, but having a chance to share the program like with Connor while he was there and seeing him be a dad, which was cool. But I think for me, like coach has always backed me, whether it's been on the court, in that sense, but also in a personal level as well. You mentioned your dad passed away, my dad passed away. Like he was the first person to pick up the phone and give me a call and see how I was doing, and just. Also, even when my dad was sick with cancer, we'd give him a call every couple of weeks just to like shoot the shit with him, just primarily because my dad had nothing really else to do. So just even like having a chance to hear about practice or hearing how things are going, like I think that's always meant the world to me and my family for sure. So can't say enough about kind of like character he has, and I know there's definitely times where he can be a little prickly sometimes on the with opposing with referees or with anything like that. But I'm definitely really proud of been a player for Coach McCaffery, and something I'm always gonna be proud of.
Nicholas, I know you might be surprised to hear this, but he can be prickly with the media as well. I've gotten scolded before. It was, I don't know if you were playing. It was after I don't think you were. It was after a Iowa State Iowa game where we didn't shake hands. Nobody shook hands. And you had to ask the question. It just got a little feisty late in the game, and it was one of the few times that Fran said, "Okay, we're going into the locker room."
I think that was my senior year.
Well, okay, so I'm sitting here. And I'm sitting here, and you got to ask the question. I mean, and I was like, Fran, can you take us to the end of the game and the handshake? And I think I got handshake out, and he's like, no, we are not doing this. And I'm like, he's like, it was the right decision. I said, I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm like, could you explain the decision? And he's just like, no, it was the right thing. And he just dismissed me, and I'm like, yeah, I got scolded, but got to do what you got to do. And he's a fiery individual, and that's what done him really well.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too is I know kind of his always philosophy of that is like protecting the players first. Like don't want any nonsense, especially in like a heated situation like that. We had a couple of times where we did that, and it was mostly for protection of the players and his guys. But kind of curious on your end, like what's that been like for you, like on the kind of like the receiving end of some of that, or how have you kind of? I'm not sure like. Obviously, I know coaches said it, but I'm sure that's not the first time where like a coach or like or somebody's maybe been a little bit short with you. So like as a media member, I guess, curiosity, how do you handle that?
I just don't think you take it personally because you can't. Yeah. Everybody's in their element. Believe it or not, that was me catching strays, I think. That was him being protective of his players. It didn't matter if it was me. It didn't matter if it was Mike Halas or Tom Kakert or whoever else. Whoever asked that question, he was going to be that way. It's my job to ask it. Somebody had to ask it. I did it. I don't take anything personally from it. Like I said, the things that I'll take from Fran will be more the interactions off the court. I mean, he came down. They did a press conference here in the Quad Cities because they were playing here this year. And I mean, I sat there and talked to him for 15, 20 minutes, and it was, how's the kids? How's this, that, all that kind of stuff. I mean, believe it or not, if you would talk to me maybe 5 minutes before a newscast or a sportscast back in the day when I was running around crazy and somebody asked me a question I didn't want to hear, I was probably not the most pleasant guy to talk to as well. So I think it's more circumstances with that, and you kind of get to know it. And if you get offended by it, then you're probably not in the right business, because you got to have a thicker skin with that kind of stuff as well. So, and I think he knows that as well. The thing that I always remember about Fran was his brother was in the media. So I do think I love the fact, and I'm speaking in past tense, so I don't know why I'm doing that. But Fran, I think, is longer with most of his answers because of the fact that he understands what his brother's gone through. If that makes any sense, he knows that we need to do our job as well. So, Fran's the least. I've been scolded by everybody, Nicholas. As long as the players are nice to me, that's all I care about. Yeah. So, before I let you go, I do want to ask you about a Quad City kid, because we mentioned Brock Harding. Brock is a lightning rod as well. I don't know if you knew this, but on Tom's site, people were blaming me for Brock because I set the bar too high for him. So it's now my fault. But anyways, I thought he's playing really well, especially of late. I thought he played great in Nebraska. What have you seen from him in his game recently that maybe you like moving forward?
Well, I mean, first off, I think those people need to keep on commenting and keep on getting that aggregated, because we need to keep on blaming Randazzo for really any faults of the Iowa basketball program. So keep those comments rolling in. But I've been excited for Brock. I know it maybe hasn't been definitely the season that he's wanted, but I mean, last game 12 points, 3 threes. I think for him, what I've been impressed with, especially that game against Nebraska, like, there was a clear game plan to come off a ball screen and whip a pass over the corner. And he hit 2 or 3 of those, hit Price in stride, he got Price going. So I think for him, I've been excited to see that part of his development, being able to take what's a clear game plan development, be able to execute it, and you set his teammates up for success. So happy for him for that. I think big game obviously against Ohio State here on Wednesday. So I think honestly, that's where I've been kind of watching as the season has gone on, and it's been maybe clear that this team isn't likely to make the NCAA tournament. Just like more so investing in the development of some of the younger players. And I think Brock's definitely kind of one of those that stands out, and glad he's had a chance to get a little bit of an extended run here and get some playing time, and get some experience, which has been great.
Absolutely. Nicholas Baer, we're going to let you go, but before you go, obviously, who knows what happens at the end of this thing when it comes to the end of the season, all that kind of stuff. It's hard for me to say what do you think should happen, what do you expect should happen.
Mm-hmm.
But as a former player, what are your thoughts moving into these next few days, and what might be a decision that Beth Goetz has for the University of Iowa basketball program?
Yeah, I mean, I have no intel or any inside information left or right or anything like that. The only thing I would say was I don't think it's a scenario where Coach McCaffery's ready to be done being a basketball coach. I think on the whole, whether it's hopefully at the University of Iowa continued, but if not, the guy just loves hoops. I don't see a scenario where he's like, hey man, I'm just gonna go golf 18 here in Florida for the winters or anything like that. So I think he definitely wants to continue coaching. So whether that's hopefully I hope it's here at the University of Iowa, but that's the only thing I would say is my experience getting a chance to play for him, work for him as a year as a grad assistant. Like, this guy loves basketball and wants to be around basketball as much as possible. So we'll see. I don't think anything's necessarily dependent on the outcome of the Big Ten tournament by any means, but Coach is my guy, and I'm always going to support him that way.
Absolutely. Nicholas Baer joining us right now. What I say is that I always, regardless of what happens, I don't think I'll get frustrated. And I think that's been your frustration is if fans don't remember what he's done as a whole. I mean, he's the all-time leading coach in Iowa basketball history. Whatever happens next week, whether he's still the coach or not the coach, he's still the all-time winningest coach in Iowa basketball history. And there's something to be said for that. He did a lot of good for the program and is still doing a lot of good for the program. Hey, Nicholas, you dabble in the podcasting game. Tell us about that. And there's one that's going to be coming out soon that I think fans would love to listen to if they're Iowa fans. I
do dabble in the podcast game, nowhere near the extent of the Off the Air podcast with Matt Randazzo.
You don't do 2 hours every day?
No, I don't. I do not. So I'm nowhere up to near those levels. But I do a podcast with my buddies Brady Ellenson and Charlie Rose, who also played basketball at the University of Iowa. So we're going to be recording a podcast tomorrow night. Will be released Wednesday morning. Kind of just going over this season for Iowa men's basketball. Kind of similar topics we discussed a little bit today, but a little bit more in depth, maybe some personal stories from the program as well, and kind of some additional insight into how we've evaluated coaches' experience at Iowa so far. And then we're also big college basketball fans in general. So it's conference tournament week, which is a week we love. So we'll be covering that as well. But it's 3 Points Podcast is the name of it. But I'm going to tweet it out from my personal page on Twitter. So just follow me on Twitter. And that's really all you need to know, Matt Randazzo. And then just tune in and feel free to listen from there.
It's just Nicholas Baer, right? That's how to follow?
That's it. There's no one else. There's no other Nicholas Baer.
There's only one Baer.
That's the username. Just roll with it.
It should be Bear Cage is what it should be.
That's true.
Who wins the Big Ten tournament? If it's not Iowa, don't say Iowa. We'll take Iowa out of the equation.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard to bet against Michigan State. I know it's like, oh, nice, dude. You just took the number 1 overall team. Really, really cogent analysis there, Nicholas. But I think really interesting to see, this is a little different Michigan State team in the past where it's, teams that don't really have a star player necessarily, but they are playing really hard and I almost describe them as your crotchety old man's favorite team. Oh, those guys play hard. They rebound. Look how physical they are. Which is obviously, great attributes to have. So I would lean them. I think they're obviously a fun team to watch and definitely built for some of the rigors of the Big Ten.
I think you just were referencing me when you said crotchety old man, because that's what I feel like.
If that's an inference you make, Dazzo, I have no control over that.
Nicholas, I appreciate you doing this. We'll catch up again real soon. 3 Points Podcast and at Nicholas Baer on X. Check it all out, and we'll talk to you real soon, my friend. I always appreciate you. Be well.
Thanks, Dazzo.
All right. Nicholas Baer, former Bulldog, I still give Curtis Clark a hard time every time I talk to him because he's the only guy that could stop Nicholas Baer from making threes. I tell it to him all the time. But Nicholas, a fantastic career at the University of Iowa. Great insight here today on the big picture of Fran McCaffery, because I think people get caught up in the instant decision, and I understand that. I'm a fan. I get all that. But like the big picture of 14, 15 years of the program and all that kind of stuff as well. So we got plenty more to get to. You're watching Off the Air on a Tuesday right here in the Quad Cities. When it comes to quality, convenient pizza, Godfather's Pizza in Silvis has you covered. Featuring a beautiful dine-in area, delivery, and a carry-out window. Godfather's Pizza is that pizza you grew up with, not a convenience store. You see, at Godfather's Pizza, the dough is made fresh daily. That mozzarella cheese is shredded fresh and never frozen. And those toppings are abundantly piled high each and every time. Locally owned and operated since 2010, Godfather's is a huge supporter of local athletes right here in the Quad Cities. So come on by and check them out at 1211 Avenue of the Cities in Silvis. Order online at godfathers.com and reunite with that same delicious pizza you grew up with.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
View from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad Cities' best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. It's Tuesday here in the Quad Cities, a beautiful Tuesday. It doesn't look like March Madness weather outside, but it is officially March Madness. And one thing I'm going to miss this year is not going to the Big Ten tournament. And one guy I'm going to miss seeing is this guy right here. Jim Mattson joining us, our Illini expert, legend down in the area of Peoria and Bloomington, Notre Dame. And Jim, it is that fun week, and it's at a place I know you love because Indianapolis, besides location, I think does the best job. So that I want to put that out there. But location-wise, it's pretty nice for you, and it was for me as well.
Yeah, it's great for me. Now, it's kind of confusing this week because I do have the high school basketball, but again, I can actually hit Champaign and Indianapolis together, which is fantastic. But I'm with you. If they put the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis every year, I'd be thrilled. You got the Indiana, Purdue, Illinois. I mean, most fan bases can drive to it, which is great, but some of them are right there. But yeah, Indiana, I'm always amazed at how Indianapolis built that city and that everything's downtown. You can get in your hotel, you can stay all week, you can go to a Colts game, you can go to the Big Ten tournament. I mean, everything's right downtown, the bars, the restaurants. I think it's just a great college venue for any kind of tournament or any kind of game.
1,000%. We lived there for a couple years because the NCAA tournament was there, Big Ten tournament was there. Everything was kind of one-stop shopping. So I'm going to miss India a little bit this year. But Illinois going to Indianapolis, I feel like, Jim, we're on a roller coaster ride. Every time we talk to you, it's something different. It's like it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. Right now it's up. They end the season with 3 straight wins, a crazy victory on Friday night, which I hate. Should never be on Friday night, but a crazy victory Friday night against Purdue. Give me the pulse of Illini Nation as the Big Ten tournament comes our way.
Well, it's up. It's very much up. I mean, they're back in the top 25. They're riding a 3-game winning streak. They're getting healthy. Morez is going to come back. He's been cleared to play in the Big Ten tournament. I keep going back to, I thought Illinois was pretty good in December, and that was almost without Will Riley and without Morez Johnson. Now you have Will Riley contributing, 22 points versus Purdue, playing at a very high level. And you're going to have Merez back. And Merez, was kind of almost a double-double guy, or an 8-rebound, 8-point guy. Really makes Illinois an elite rebounding team. Will Riley makes them more of an elite scoring team. I mean, I'm not sure you can 100% say peaking, but it sure seems like they're peaking right now as far as roster being healthy, number of guys contributing. I think they have 5 guys in double figures, 7 guys over 8 points a game. So, they've got a lot of what Michigan State has with their strength in numbers. Illinois can throw a lot of different guys at you. And I think most Illini fans are pretty darn excited about where they are now and where they'll be this week for the Big Ten tournament, and probably more importantly next week for the Big Dance.
Jim, I don't want to age you, but you've done this a few years, and in college basketball, there's very few seasons like, what was it, the 2005 Illini that just didn't lose or whatever. Those teams are very, very rare, and every team goes through it. Maybe Illinois' lows kind of went really low with certain things, and I think it was just a bad storm of playing a really good Duke team. We talked about that. The teams they lost to were really good. The banner thing happened in the midst of it, was just a head scratcher and made everything seem probably worse. But that's what college basketball is. Every team kind of goes through it at one point in the season. If you're an Illini fan, you got to hope, man, that was us just going through it, and now we're ready to rock at the right time of the year.
Yeah, I think more so than ever, especially with the expanded conferences, the expanded conference schedule, the different TV starting times. I mean, I'm a kid who grew up in the 70s and 80s, and in the 80s you played Thursday night, Saturday night. You traveled to travel partners. You knew the next week's Big Ten games are going to be Thursday and Saturday. You didn't play Sundays, you didn't play Fridays, you didn't play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I think the schedule, the injuries caught up with Illinois. You mentioned the 2005 Illini, undefeated until the final game of the year. That team started the same lineup every single game, which is rare too. They did not have an injury of any significance. Now, Brian Randall got hurt before the year, but they didn't have an injury of any significance during the entire season that affected the starting 5, which is, kind of unheard of too. Illinois had bumps because of injuries. I think the schedule wore them out. We're seeing Purdue right now has lost 5 out of 7. Does that mean Purdue's bad? No, I think the schedule has just got them. They had to go to Michigan State. They had to go to Indiana. They had to go to Illinois. I mean, you play Wisconsin at home. I mean, I think you get into those. You can almost see on your schedule where with 3 games in 6 days, 2 different venues. It's hard, and I think Illinois got kind of bit by the Big Ten schedule wearing out the injuries. But again, right now, just about everyone on the team is trending well. Boswell's playing well. Trey White's playing well. KJ's maybe not playing great, but he hit the big shot the other day. Ivisic is playing well. You're getting Merez back. I mean, again, if you want to talk about the word peaking, it seems like a lot of Illinois players individually and the team themselves are certainly peaking since the Duke debacle.
Jim, talk to me about Merez, because I know he's going to bring rebounding and all that kind of stuff, but I think he brings a swagger to Illinois basketball that they've missed a little bit at some points the last 2-3 weeks since he's been out. What does he bring back, intangible wise, that I think is going to help in the postseason?
Well, he brings a lot. You're right. He brings a swagger. He brings a physicality. He brings obviously extra possessions with his offensive rebounding, but he also brings a lot of versatility with the lineup. I mean, you can go super big with this lineup. You can have Hamrickhouse play the 3 at 6'9". You can go Merez at center. You can go Merez at power forward. There's a lot of different ways you can go here, but I mean, I think it brings all kinds of I think it's very tough to match up with Illinois size-wise. You could have KJ and Riley at guard, and then the 3 bigs, and 2 of them can shoot threes with Ivisic and certainly with Hamrickhouse. So I mean, the versatility he brings. But you're right. I think he brings a lot of emotion, a lot of fire on a team that kind of the European stereotype is that the Europeans are kind of just go about their business. There isn't a lot of fire on this team. Even Will Riley's not but Merez brings that fire, which is exciting.
Jim, if you go to Indianapolis and you're the Illini this week, I know the players and coaches are going to say the goal is to win the Big Ten tournament, and I get that. I also know, and I've seen in the past, teams win 4 games in 4 days and then go not play great in the NCAA tournament. I think there's different ways to look at that, because there's good examples where teams have gone and continued to play well. So I don't want to harp on that. But if I said to you, the goal for Illinois this week should be what? Is it championship? Is it improving seed? What's the goal if you're Illinois this week?
Yeah, I think playing is important for Illinois because they are working Morez back in the lineup, and I think getting Morez a couple games would really help Illinois going into next week. So I think certainly some winning is important. I have always been kind of a firm believer. I'd almost rather lose and go home and rest. But last year when I was in Minneapolis and the confetti came down, and it was orange and blue, and the Illini Nation was fired up. I do think they took some momentum into the next tournament, into the big dance, and obviously made a run to the Elite Eight for the first time in 19 years. So I see both sides of it. I mean, I think the risk of getting a player hurt, the risk of injury, the risk of wearing out is awfully high. I wish the Big Ten tournament would end on Thursday or end on Friday. I know because of TV and CBS and that game right before the NCAA brackets is one of the highest rated games and worth a bunch of money to both the Big Ten and CBS. I know that's not happening, but it is really hard Sunday night to be watching those pairings. And last year Minneapolis, this year Indianapolis. Go back to campus, go to your next game. There's the potential to get worn out. So I've always been a believer rest is probably more important. But you spin it whichever way you want. I mean, if you win, momentum. If you lose, rest. I mean, it's next week's more important in the big picture, but it's nice to win the tournament. I know Iowa was excited when they won it. Illinois was excited when they won it. It's fun to win the Big Ten tournament for sure.
Yeah, anytime you can say you're a Big Ten champion in anything, it has a little pull to it, a little swagger to it. Jim, when you look at the Illini, they don't know who they play. And so let's look at that Wednesday matchup. It's Iowa, who surprises everybody right here in our own backyard. Everyone thought they'd be looking maybe for a coach here on a Tuesday, and they now go to Indianapolis with a little momentum, and then Ohio State. Is there, as a fan, is there a team that you're like, man, I'd love to see them again? That's a better matchup? Or would you, everyone would like to see Iowa, Illinois part 2. I mean, we've complained, you and I, plenty on here that they don't play enough, no football, only once in basketball. What's the mindset of who they might see on Thursday?
I mean, I think Iowa's the better matchup for Illinois because of the lack of Freeman, the lack of size. I just mentioned how big Illinois is. So I think Illinois fans are probably quietly rooting for Iowa. I think it would be great for Illinois to play Maryland again. I know Maryland's a really hard matchup for Illinois, but you're going to get hard matchups in the NCAA. I think it'll be a good test to get them ready for the tournament a little bit in that regard. But I think Iowa's a little better matchup for them. They're both kind of perimeter teams. I think Illinois probably matches up pretty well with both of them. Thornton on Ohio State's been kind of a pain in Illinois' side for years, so maybe they don't want to see him quite as much. But, I think Iowa's probably the matchup Illinois wants. And, I'm an Illinois fan. It would excite me to see Illinois and Iowa again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Plus, and correct me if I'm wrong, but no Morez the first time around.
Right.
And you add him in, they beat him by 20. Yeah. You'd think that'd be a good situation for the Illini. Seed-wise, this for me, do you know what's Illinois looking at right now? You talked about that Maryland matchup or possible Maryland matchup. Can they get – and I always think people – maybe overreact a little bit to the Big Ten tournament. Yeah, it can help you a little bit here and there, but I think a lot of the body of work is already done. What's the hope or the thought process when it comes to seeding right now for the Illinois basketball program?
I think they're 5-7. I don't see them dropping to 8. I just think they have too many good wins to be an 8 seed and too high in net ranking to be an 8 seed. So I think they've gotten themselves off that 8-9 line, the line where you'd have to play a Duke or Auburn in round 2. I think they're 6 right now, I think is what Lenardi has. I think that's about right. I think with a couple wins, they might be able to get to a 5, but I'm with you. I think the Big Ten tournament is, I think when those guys meet in the selection committee, they're hardly paying attention to results of the Big Ten tournament. But I think 5's as high as they can go. I think 7. If you lose to Iowa or Ohio State, you might flirt with 8, but I think it'll be a 5, 6, or 7. Win a game, you're a 6. Win a couple games, you might be a 5. Lose to Maryland Friday night, you're probably a 7, I think. So 5, 6, 7 is where I think they'll be.
I've seen Illinois to Milwaukee. As a guy that's in Peoria, you'd be okay with that, I'm sure. You'd be okay with hopping from Indianapolis maybe up to Milwaukee. So that would be a good thing. Jim, I want to talk to you about something else Illini, and then a few high school things too.
Okay, sure.
No spring game. And it's not, hey, we're canceling the spring game. Some minor renovations to Memorial Stadium, so no spring game down there. I can't remember a more anticipated Illinois football season. I think in I'm sure when I was younger and maybe the Rice and those guys, Simeon Rice and those guys, maybe those days, but it's been a while. Obviously, you want to keep that excitement going in the spring. But as we know, and we've talked about on here, there's Nebraska and USC and some other big schools, Texas, I think, that are getting rid of the spring game. Your thoughts on no spring game this year? It's because of the renovations, but it could be a trend moving forward.
Yeah, the spring game, I think, is probably less of a factor than it's ever been. I mean, in the days of, tackling and full contact, and the spring game was exciting to see the young players and how they matched up and the new starters. Obviously, Illinois doesn't have a lot of new starters. They got a lot of veterans coming back. Most teams aren't tackling. Most teams aren't putting themselves in the risk of injury. The spring games are kind of handled like NFL exhibition games now a little bit where, don't hit the star players, get the star players off the field. I'm with you, though. I think that the spring game was kind of a celebration of hope and excitement and, let's come to campus in April, knowing that we're going to be back in September to back this team. And I think there's some kind of fan carnival atmosphere that will be missing not having a spring game. And I think you make a great point. I mean, this is one of the most anticipated Illinois seasons ever. It's a year in which, heck, they may have got 30, 40,000 people for a spring game, and people are excited and people do want to see this team. But, Bielema had already said with about 18 starters back, those guys aren't playing in a spring game. You're not going to risk Luke Altmaier getting hurt or these guys getting hurt. But I'm with you. The spring game for me was always kind of fun to see some of the redshirt freshmen who, we heard about and they said they look good in practice. How do they look? But it's something that I think is probably going to go away at more and more places. I know we talked a little bit off camera about, the spring game being videotaped and televised by the Big Ten Network is almost an invitation for schools to portal shop and to look at, hey, that's the third string kid in Illinois. He'll be a first string starter here. Let's make an offer to him. So I think there's worry about that too, about spies finding out about your depth and trying to, kind of snatch away your depth.
Yeah, absolutely. Last week on the show, we had Scott Docterman, who's been doing it forever.
Yeah.
He's with the Athletic right now. He talked with, he went to the Combine, and he talked with Brett Bielema on his way to the Combine, had a 2.5-hour conversation with him to do some stories and everything. And we talked a lot of Illini football. And to hear those things from national guys, I mean, Scott's as good as they get nationally now. And to say, like, this is as the anticipated of an Illinois football season as there's been. And there's a realistic possibility that this team, the goal should be to make the college football playoffs. I mean, that's what the goal should be. Is the excitement in your area in Champaign equal to what the expectations are around the nation? Is that Illinois football, excitement, it usually goes away a little bit during basketball, especially. Is it still there? Can you feel the buzz that might be what happens this fall?
Oh, I can. I mean, I think there's a ton of momentum. I think the 10th win, the bowl game, the exciting games, I go back to, a lot of life anymore is marketing. And I go back to the 100th anniversary game, the red grange uniforms, how great that played out on TV, how great that played out among the Illini Nation. It's rolling downhill, the snowball, the momentum, the excitement. People are really, really fired up now about Illinois football. And, I've had a number of people talk about the Ohio State game. We're talking October 11th. People are already excited about Illinois football. Probably, you mentioned the Simeon Rice, Kevin Hardy, the Dana Howard, the Holacek teams, the great teams of Illinois' past, the Jeff George teams. I probably go back to my sophomore year at Illinois, 1984, 85, when Illinois was coming off a Rose Bowl year. They had, Jack Trudeau, Thomas Rooks, a bunch of sophomores turned juniors, and every game was sold out preseason. It's probably been about 40 years since excitement was this high for Illinois football, and it's a unique position they're in, and hopefully they can seize on it. And Scott does a great job, and Bielema, I think, has really impressed the national media because he's really had a blueprint, and he's kind of followed that blueprint. Get Illinois kids, get linemen, coach them up. He's brought in a lot of kids. Matthew Bailey from your area, a lot of kids who weren't heavily recruited. He's coached them up to the point where they are all Big Ten caliber. So you look at what he's done and the blueprint he's followed, and it's been masterful.
Yeah, no, he's done an amazing job. I think the cool thing that Scott said is that, and we both talk about, I've talked about a lot, is he's given Illinois football an identity that they haven't had in a while.
Yeah.
And whether it's good or bad, and it's good, but if you're making attention, if you're making headlines in any way, whether it's the tweeting at Harbaugh or all those kind of things, that's fun. Or the sideline warning last year, you got to love that.
Right.
Is there a shirt? Is there a shirt with Big Brett doing this? There should be.
I think there is, yeah.
Okay. If not, we need to do that. It'll be $1 million idea. We can make some money. Jim, it is that time of year that's super busy for you. I was just joking with my wife last night that this is my first year not doing it in almost 25 years, and it's our easiest year up here. Like we're done. Like our last teams lost last night. So, which is crazy. There's been times that me and Weezy would head to the Big Ten tournament and think like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do back here? But I know it's crazy busy for you. And I love this time of year for high school sports. And I always tell people in our area, even if teams aren't down at state, go down to state. Like the way they do it now where 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A are all on the same day. I mean, it's just a great idea to go down if your kid loves high school basketball in general. Go down and check it out. But one that got a lot of attention was last Friday night. Lanark Eastland and Pecatonica. We had a coach's corner on yesterday. Really thankful to have Sean Taylor, Henry Hall, and Scott Hardison on to kind of talk about it. But Lanark Eastland used a strategy where they didn't do much in the first quarter. They held the ball literally for the first quarter, and they slowed things down. And they beat a team they lost to by 30 to get a sectional championship. Pecatonica really good this year. Your thoughts when you hear those things? And what is it, 2025 of high school basketball? It's just different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I have been in favor of a shot clock for 30 years. I mean, I remember the days in college basketball when North Carolina and Duke would play 12 to 10 games, and they finally said enough of this. Let's get a shot clock. And so I'm old enough to remember before the shot clock in college basketball, and I remember people fighting it, saying we don't want it, we don't want it. And look how great college basketball is, and we still have Cinderellas, and we still have great games, and we still have upsets, and we still. I mean, the shot clock is not going to bury high school basketball. It won't. And so I've always been in favor of a shot clock. But there is no shot clock right now. And Eastland used a strategy, and Pecatonica could have countered the strategy and come out and play defense. And I saw Pecatonica 3 times this year. I thought for sure they were the 1A state champ. And, I'm not going to throw a coach under the bus here, but he's going to regret that decision forever. I mean, those kids turned a 4-quarter game into a 3-quarter game and got beat by a team that I'm sure they feel like they'd beat 10 out of 10. And it didn't happen this night because it wasn't a 32-minute game. And I'm not against what Eastland did at all. I mean, it's a strategy, and if the other team's going to let you shorten the game, and I'm going to shorten the game. Pecatonica to me was the best team in the state. I think every team in the state would have said, "How do we shorten the game? How do we improve our chances by limiting their chances?" And they did it marvelously with help from Pecatonica sitting in the zone.
Yeah, you look at it, and people talk about fouling down or up 3 with closing seconds and all those. It's a strategy, and some people agree with it, some don't. But that's a strategy. They used a strategy within the rules to win a basketball game. I think hats off to them. It's funny, Jim, because the Iowa side of the river. So of course the Quad Cities, we see both of it, and the Iowa side a couple of years ago said there should be a shot clock, and boom, there's a shot clock, and it didn't. No kids struggled. There wasn't any freezing of basketball so people could learn how to play again. And it just went on and it was fine. And I don't understand what the process for the IHSA is, because it's coming not next year, but the year after. But why? I get putting in clocks and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, come on. It's going to take 4 years to put clocks in every gym. I mean, I feel like it could be done quicker, couldn't it?
I was astonished when they approved it and said 3 years down the road or whatever. I know these small schools are saying, well, we need an extra ref, we need an extra buy clocks, sure there's going to be hiccups, and sure there's going to be costs. But 15 years ago we added a third ref for every game, and everybody in the state did it. We've added things, we've added costs, we've been. Most 99% of the school districts, people are going to step up to help the high school kids. Somebody's going to buy that clock, put a sponsorship on it. It could have been done this year. It certainly could be done next year. thank God it's finally coming. But I'm with you. I can't believe, obviously they didn't put a clock on putting the clock in because it's taking forever.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've talked to coaches on the Iowa side when it happened. I was like, what's it like? And they don't even think about it. Like, there's not too much.
Well, the holiday tournaments.
Yeah. Like, you don't sit there
the
and
holiday tournaments in Illinois use the clock, and it's a better game. It's not a big issue. Maybe once or twice a game, the clock didn't start, or there's a question about whether the clock should have reset. But the game itself, and yet the clock doesn't come into play very often. It's not like there's a lot of times. It does come into play when you hold the ball for 7 minutes, and it does come into play in the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter becomes a chase and defend and shoot free throws game. With the shot clock, it becomes a basketball game up until maybe the final minute.
All right, I got a multiple choice question before I let you go.
All right.
The 3 coaches we had on yesterday, I told them they could change one rule about high school basketball. One of them wanted the arc underneath the basket so that we can help with charge and block calls. Another one said that in the final 2 minutes of the game, you should be able to advance the ball on a timeout to midcourt. They do that in college basketball for the women and then the NBA. And the other one mentioned making it a 9-minute quarter instead of an 8-minute quarter. I guess Wisconsin does 18-minute halves, but just to make the game a little longer because you know it. And when we're bouncing around from games to game, sometimes games are an hour and 5 minutes, hour and 10 minutes,
right.
Gives more playing time, all those kind of things. If you could pick one of those or another rule that I didn't mention, how would you adjust the game of high school basketball?
I actually like 6 fouls. I like having players stay on the floor more. I hate that a kid gets 2 quick fouls and sits down. So I actually like 6 fouls in both college and high school. I don't mind the longer game. I actually like all the rules. I hate the charging under the basket. I hate, so there's a lot of things I think could be cleaned up and changed. But I've always been in favor of letting the kids play more. So I think 6 falls. It's not like we have a bunch of Barugers out there. Usually a kid gets 5 falls and 3 of them are ticky-tack. So I've always wanted the kids to play more. So I've always said, let's leave the kids on the court longer.
Yeah, I like that one as well. Before we let you go, NFL free agency is crazy. It was funny that X was down yesterday when all this craziness goes on. You are a Bears fan, correct?
I cover the Bears. It's frustrating.
Yeah, but hey, and I'm going to joke, and we're going to talk with Bobby Metcalf in the next segment. They're winning another offseason because they made some interesting moves. Your thoughts on what the Bears did just in 48 hours into free agency?
Well, I think they addressed things they should have addressed last year, the offensive line and the defensive line. I think Ben Johnson wants that interior for Caleb Williams to be able to step up. And I think that's one of the problems with the Bears is, edge rushers are always going to get around the edge. Some of the best athletes in the world are playing edge rusher. When Caleb Williams, when any Bears quarterback has stepped up, Justin Fields, the interior offensive line has been so bad. So I think the Bears improving that interior offensive line is big. The defensive line, I still don't know if they have the great pass rusher. I don't know if Montez Sweat's that great pass rusher, but I liked that they're kind of the Lions have a great offensive line. Copy that. The Eagles won a Super Bowl with a great offensive line and defensive line. Copy that. I think the Bears are on the right track here. I'm not a huge free agency is the great panacea. I don't like signing free agents over 30. I think the end of those contracts become a problem. But I do like something. Dahlman's a young guy. The kid from Indianapolis is a young guy. I like signing free agents on their second contract when they're like 25 to 28, and you can get maybe their prime years. So I like the aggression of the Bears. And what's exciting is they still have a first-round pick, a top 10, and then 2 second-round picks. They've got a lot of opportunity still to grow in this offseason. Now they don't have to pick offensive linemen. I still think they need another defensive lineman or so, but they have filled a lot of gaps. But I was joking with you. The Lions feel like, they're improving. The Vikings feel like they're improving. The Packers feel like they're improving. The offseason is kind of fool's gold. It's really about, I think, April drafting, developing your own young players. And it's really about the quarterback. I think that if Caleb Williams is good, the Bears are going to be good. If Caleb Williams is great, the Bears are going to be great. And hopefully that's the case.
Yeah, you can simplify it by saying that, and you're exactly right. And it is, boy, that NFC North. You look at it, and it was really good last year. I know they didn't translate into the postseason, and that's my Lions bad. That's on us. but I think it really is good. And you got to be like sometimes. And what's funny is the two teams that have the rookie quarterbacks are the one, or not rookie, but on rookie contracts are the ones can spend a lot of money because they're saving.
Yeah.
I mean, when Jared Goff's making
so.
$50 million and Jordan Love's making what he's making, it's tougher to spend. So it should be a ton of fun. A great segue coming up to our next segment, but I'm going to let you go. Good luck with all the high school sports. I know you're super busy. If you make it to Indy, eat at the Eagle. That's what Weezy and I always ate.
Right.
We're going to miss doing it this year, and we'll catch up with you real soon. I always appreciate you, Jim.
Sounds good. Enjoy the madness, everybody.
All right. Jim Mattson from down in Peoria joining us. Great insight on what Illinois has coming up, not just this week, but the next week as well, heading into the NCAA tournament. Illinois might be playing their best basketball at the right time of the season. Well, we just talked a little Bears football. There's plenty of opinions when it comes to free agency and what teams are doing right now. We'll talk a little bit about it and update you on what's going on right now when it comes to the NFL free agency, because you go to X and you scroll and something different is going on. We're going to do that with our good friend and former sports writer, Bobby Metcalf, right after this here on Off the Air on a Tuesday. When it comes to quality, convenient pizza, Godfather's Pizza in Silvis has you covered. Featuring a beautiful dine-in area, delivery, and a carry-out window. Godfather's Pizza is that pizza you grew up with, not a convenience store. You see, at Godfather's Pizza, the dough is made fresh daily. That mozzarella cheese is shredded fresh and never frozen. And those toppings are abundantly piled high each and every time. Locally owned and operated since 2010, Godfather's is a huge supporter of local athletes right here in the Quad Cities. So come on by and check them out at 1211 Avenue of the Cities in Silvis. Order online at godfathers.com and reunite with that same delicious pizza you grew up with. Welcome back to Off the Air on a Tuesday here in the Quad Cities. A beautiful Tuesday it is, March 11th. Thank you guys for joining us so much. We appreciate it. It was funky at the beginning of this show. We had to do a retake. We had to start this thing over thanks to internet, but we're rocking and rolling right now, and we got a lot to talk about because there is a lot going on in the world of sports besides, March Madness and all that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping he's smiling. My good friend Bobby Metcalf, former sports writer here in the Quad Cities. I got all excited when I saw you, Bobby. Former sports writer and currently a producer at WQID. Bobby, how are you, my friend? Good to see you.
Great, Matt. Good to see you again. How are you?
I'm great. Hey, I wanted to have you on because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world of sports that I want somebody to chat with and talk with, and we worked together for a short time at WQAD, but we've known each other for a long time, and many late nights arguing on the phone with this guy, and it usually was about the Bears. There was probably some other things we argued about, but we'll leave those for later, and the Bears are one of them. So the Bears very active yesterday. They obviously have trades coming. They had already signed or traded for Jackson and Tooney. They add Dahlman yesterday. Then they add a couple defensive linemen, including Grady Jackson yesterday. I haven't seen them do anything yet today, but I'm waiting for it. Your thoughts on the way they've attacked free agency so far?
Hang that banner, baby. 3-time offseason champs. I love it.
No,
it translates so well so far. I mean, they've done, as Jim Mattson said just before I came on, I mean, they've addressed everything that they've so far needed to address. The offensive line was abysmal, gave up 60-plus sacks last year. You need to protect what you hope is your franchise quarterback and Caleb Williams, and their defensive line needed an upgrade. And I think Grady Jarrett's a little bit, old, but I mean, he's a superstar at the defensive tackles position. And, the guy they got picked up from Indy, I think is a great sort of, I don't know if he's going to be a star, but a great sort of rotational piece. You have to love everything they've done so far, but I also love what most of what they did last year, and it turned into a terrible season. So we'll see.
No, I know there's as that was, and you mentioned it and you took it, but they keep winning off seasons and they've been stacking. And as a Lions fan, everybody knows I am, and and some will accuse me of being a Bears hater. I don't want to go that far. I feel like I'm a unbiased member of the media. But there's that Bobby look that I'm used to so well. But with that being said, there's some things I like and some things I didn't. And you're right. They attack the trenches, which was a huge issue. And I don't want to come on here like I'm an expert because my team is suddenly good. But as somebody who watched their team be so bad for so long, and watching the blueprint of how the Lions built what they did, Ben Johnson got there and said, we win in the trenches. We win up front. That's where it all starts. And it was bad last year. So I appreciate that. I love the Dahlman signing. I think he's 26, 27 years old, maybe 27. So a younger guy that I like that second contract where you're going to get him. He's going to give you his best years. You're not overpaying, all those kind of things. I like that. I don't like the Jonah Jackson trade. And I know you don't give up a lot for him, and maybe he comes back and gets with Ben Johnson again, and he's really, really good. But I think that's one of those guys that the Lions let go, and then the Rams let go. And those are two, which is weird to say, good organizations right now, which is weird. So, I don't love that for them, but it is what it is, and it's probably an upgrade from last year. And then Tooney is Tooney. He's an all-pro. He's good. He is 33, 34, and like you mentioned, that could become interesting down the road. But they addressed what they needed to. You look at the defensive line, and Grady Jackson, I think you're right. He's a professional, if that makes sense. He might not be a superstar anymore. He might not be making all-pro teams or even Pro Bowls, but he's a steadying veteran guy that you're going to get quality production from, or the floor is pretty high, if that makes sense. He's not going to flop badly. And then I like the flyer they took at defensive end. I don't know if it's going to be great, but they took a flyer at a guy going into his second year and kind of attacking that. So you look at what the Bears have done, it kind of leaves the rest of the offseason up for grabs with what they can do now with the draft and all those kind of things. One thing I want to mention, I want to ask you about, you can tell, and just today the Vikings have signed 2 stud tackles and now a guard. So they went and spent money because they're not paying for that quarterback. You can see the Bears and Vikings being more aggressive because they're not paying $50 million for a guy to take a snap, aren't they?
I mean, this is the blueprint we saw. I think really the Seahawks may have been the first ones that really kind of cracked that blueprint when they had Russell Wilson. They drafted great and had Wilson on that rookie contract. And then that's when you saw the Legion of Boom, and they were able to invest in the defense. And then once Russ has that, gets to that caliber and start making all that money, you see them not being able to invest in certain pieces. But I mean, Mahomes, same thing. Mahomes was on a rookie contract. They were able to invest in a lot of pieces around him. Now they're losing, you lose Tyreek, and obviously it's still Mahomes and still the Chiefs, but this is the blueprint. When you have a guy on a rookie contract, you got to make the investments other places, because once really, if you want to keep a quarterback at this point, you're going to have to pay him, top dollar if you decide to keep him. And we've seen this go around the league.
Yeah. And you look at half of the North with Golf and Detroit making $50 million and Jordan Love making $50+ million as well. It makes it tougher for them to. I'm not a free agency guy. I remember the Matt Millen days where he got up in Detroit and he started trying to buy an offense and trying to buy things, and it worked out terribly. I think you supplement with it. I think it's good to use, but I don't think you build through it. So I'm not a huge free agency guy. This free agency class I don't think was great. That's why I think the Bears did some interesting things by making some trades, because I don't think there was a ton of high-level stars out there. So they went through the trade and got a few things. I think Ashton Genty, go ahead.
Going to that free agent thing, I still remember a Packers-Bears game I watched, 10+ years ago. And this is when the Packers, when are the Packers, not the Packers, when you're a Bears fan. But I mean, the Bears had, I think, signed Peppers and all these free agents. And there was a stat how the Packers had basically built up all their players through the draft. And that was when the Packers were, one of the top teams in the league. And it's just, I agree with you 100%. I like free agency. I think you can address some needs in free agency, but I think you still got to build up through the draft and homegrown talent.
Yeah. I got little kids that are like, Dad, the Lions aren't doing anything. I'm like, well, if Amon-Ra St. Brown was a free agent, would you like him? If Taylor Decker was a free agent, would you like him? If Aiden Hutchinson, who they're going to drop a bag on, if Ali McNeil, they're signing. It's all about drafting, developing, and retaining, and that's what good franchises do. It's so weird for me to say that about the Lions, but that's their free agency, is keeping the guys that they developed instead of going to get other people's developmented guys and moving on to the next phase. Bobby Metcalf joining me right now. Bobby, you look at the Bears draft. They got number 10. They got 2 first-round picks. I mean, you can do anything right now. You don't have to say. Now, I do think a tackle wouldn't be crazy. I don't think a tackle's a terrible idea, but they have 2 solid ones right now. And Darnell Wright's young. If I were the Bears, and I think Ben Johnson wants Ashton Jeanty badly. He wants a Jahmyr Gibbs. He wants a game changer. I know you're not probably running back in the first round, but he wants that type of guy. I don't know if he's there at 10, but if he was there at 10, I would run up to the podium and take him. Your thoughts?
I think their left tackle needs to be addressed. I've never been a huge Braxton Jones fan. He's been serviceable for where they got him. I think it was 5th round. I think they have to. You have to protect Caleb Williams. You have to find that guy who can be, your bookend for Caleb's career, I would think. And I mean, I think you've got, Will Campbell from LSU sitting there. I'd much rather have him than Jeanty, who maybe could be a star, maybe could be, this next big running back superstar for 4 years. Great. They got a stud for 4 years, 5 years maybe, and then he's on the downside of his career, where you could find a bookend left tackle for 10. You find like a Joe Thomas type or a Laramie Tunsil type. I mean, I would much rather have that, especially when you've got picks later. You can maybe address that position. I mean, I think Caleb Johnson's a great pick.
Yeah, no, and the thing
with just the running back position
with the running backs, and we had Scott Docterman on last week, and it's super deep. Like there's good running backs, and they're going to go higher than before, because we used to say like, man, there's a lot of running backs, and they're going to go between rounds 2 and 5. Now I think they're going to go 1 through 3 when it comes to running backs, and there's a lot of good ones. So I do agree with that. I just, knowing Ben Johnson, Bobby, and I agree with everything you say, but knowing Ben Johnson, I don't know him personally. Man, I'd love to know him personally. But knowing the way he is and what the Lions have done, he wants guys that can hit home runs. And DJ Moore can. I'm not saying he can't. I don't think you'd think of Rome Odunze and DJ Moore as, and they're really good. I'm not saying in a negative way, but I don't think they're speed guys that big play guys. They can be, but it's not like the Tariq Hills and maybe the Jamison Williams guys. So I think he loves speed. And if Jeanty's that guy, maybe he's that guy. But the kid from North Carolina might be the fastest kid in the draft, and when it comes to running backs, and he's maybe a 2nd round pick. So, but I just, knowing him and his offense and what he wants to do, he's setting things up to protect Caleb and to run the football. And I'll tell you what, going into this season, and it's not being hard on Caleb, but the excuses have to be gone. He's got the best offensive mind in football. He might have one of the best offensive lines in football, arguably one of the top 10 at least. And then he's going to have parts around him. Like they're giving him, which is smart, everything that he needs to be successful and to be a star here in the NFL.
I don't know what Caleb Williams is yet. I don't. I think he showed. I think he was better than the rap surrounding him was, because you had Jaden Daniels. The whole Jaden Daniels, though, they should have taken him over Caleb talk. I think you look at his stats, and they were great. I mean, for a rookie, but I don't know what he is. DJ Moore comes off of a career year with Justin Fields, comes in with Caleb Williams, and they never really get that connection going. Rome Odunze comes in as a top 10 receiver and, doesn't really break out when you have Malik Neighbors breaking out in New York. I don't know. I think the only known commodity on that offense is DJ Moore, because of what he's done in Carolina, what he did with that 1 year with Justin Fields. And if you got to get those 2 guys going and get the rest of the pieces around them. I mean, Cole Kmet was coming off of a great year again with Fields, and then kind of disappeared a lot of times in that offense. Now, how much of that was 3 OCs and 2 head coaches and that terrible offensive line, and so.
No, absolutely.
I just don't know what Caleb Williams is. I don't know what Caleb Williams is yet. I think he has a potential to be really good or good. I don't think I can make a judgment on him yet.
Bobby, I like to argue with you, but I agree with you 100% with that. But what makes some Bears fans, not you, but some Bears fans upset is if you say the verdict or the jury is still out on Caleb Williams. Like, that's very offensive to some people because he's a superstar. Like, I've been told it when he was drafted. I was told it all last year, and I didn't see it. I mean, yes, you can pick plays and escapability and all that kind of stuff, and you can see the talent. Like, the talent is there, but it doesn't always match up. Justin Fields looked really good. You know, he looked the part. Didn't work out. I want to ask you about Justin Fields before I let you go, because Justin Fields is now a Jet. And I know you're, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're a Justin Fields guy, I think, right? Yeah. So your 100%. Thought about him getting another opportunity, and he got paid. I mean, he's not making crazy money in the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks, but I guess 25 million isn't bad or whatever he's getting.
I mean, 2-year deal. I mean, this is probably a prove it chance. He's going to be QB1 there. I kind of feel bad for him again because he had to deal with the Bears offensive line, which was trash when he was there. Now he's going to the Jets offensive line, which, you know, if you ask Aaron Rodgers, I think he would complain about it. You know, he gets to reunite with Garrett Wilson. That's good for him. Look, I think the kid got a bad shake in Chicago. I thought they should have kept him. I thought he should have been the starter the entire year with Pittsburgh last year. I hope he gets the opportunity to really show, I think, what he's capable of. I think he has the potential to be that guy. You know, hopefully the Jets haven't had a solid quarterback since, I don't know, Chad Pennington, maybe. I mean, yeah. Like, you know, Mark Sanchez took him to a couple of AFC championships, but they haven't really had a quarterback. I mean, they took Aaron Rodgers off of, you know, what he did in Green Bay and turned him into chopped liver. So, I mean, not the greatest landing spot for anybody, but I think he's got all the potential in the world.
Bobby, if you're an NFC North fan, which pretty much encapsulates everybody in this area almost, I know there's some Chiefs fans and everything like that, but if you're a Vikings fan who just went and spent a bunch of money and now they're rolling the dice on J.J. McCarthy and we'll see how he goes. And I know they wanted to bring back Daniel Jones to kind of be that guy behind him, but he ended up going to the Colts just about an hour ago, so I don't know if that's a loss, losing Daniel Jones. I'm not saying that. But and then the Packers are the Packers, and we both know that, and we both hate them. And the Lions are going to be good again. I know they got new coordinators, and like their schedule's going to be really tough, but they're still super talented. And the Bears have made improvements. That NFC North, man, every single time those four teams play each other, it's almost must-see TV this fall, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, hopefully the Bears can actually pull their weight this year because, you know, I remember when they were 4-2 and then everyone was 4-2, 5-1, 6-0, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's the best conference. You're going to have all these teams potentially, you know, battling for the playoffs, and then the Bears just fell apart. I think if the Bears pull their weight, I mean, God, if you ask me to handicap the division right now, like I'd probably say obviously Lions won, but like the Vikings, if you're putting J.J. McCarthy out there coming off an injury, he didn't take a snap last year. That's going to be some growing pains. Obviously, they got a lot of pieces around them. You know, the Packers have some question marks. I could see any one of those teams after the Lions finishing 2. I could see any one of those teams finishing 4.
Bless your heart, Bobby. Crazy. Bless your heart. You're just being nice to me because you know we're going to lunch and you're trying to get me to buy you lunch by saying nice things about it.
No, how can you go against a team that's come off of two division titles, has been as good as they have? Now, granted, obviously you lose a lot of that coaching staff, but they've still got a lot of pieces that the Lions have to be
their schedule, man. Wait till the schedules come out. Their schedule is absolutely brutal, but that's what it's like. That's life. I'm not used to it because my team's good again. But also, the big thing with
the thing you're not even talking about. Does the NFC North have the 4? Now, granted, Ben Johnson has to prove it, but does the NFC North have the 4 best head coaches in the league?
Maybe. Like when it comes, they talk about the AFC West with Harbaugh, with Reed, with now it's Pete Carroll, and I'm missing one in the AFC West. Oh, Sean Payton at Denver. That's 4 really good ones too, but I would agree. I would say probably there because all 4 have proven it and Ben we're still waiting for. But when it comes to young, energetic minds, I think I don't want to be mean to my guy, Dan. Hey, plug your ears. I'm being nice here. But I don't know if his mind might be as good as the other 2 with LaFleur and with O'Connell. His culture may be better than all of them combined. But no, I completely agree. The thing with the Lions too is Aiden Hutchinson is one of the best defensive players in football. He comes back. Ali McNeil is one of the best defensive tackles in football. He'll be back probably by September or October. Derek Barnes was hurt all last year. He's back. So I think the good thing about the Lions is they're going to get healthy. The defense was really good before all of those injuries hit. And I know injuries happen and I get it, but it was bad. Man, it was just like, it was almost like they're cursed, Bobby. Weird, huh? The Lions being cursed. Who would have thought?
Weird.
So it'll be a lot of fun.
I think you don't have those injuries. You guys are going to the Super Bowl in my opinion.
Oh God. Anyway, one last thing before I let you go, because I just saw it. Big Ten teams come out. No Illinois guys on the first team, no Iowa guys on the first team. I haven't looked at the other ones. I did see Peyton Sanford was honorable mention by both the media and coaches. Braden Smith from Purdue was the Big Ten Player of the Year. Michigan State doesn't have a first team all Big Ten guy, and they won the league going away. Isn't that crazy?
We don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, it's
no, I mean like that's crazy. Yeah. I haven't even seen him. You just told that to me, so I haven't even looked at it.
I'm hoping that and that's fine. I think it just shows the depth of Michigan State because they don't have, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, and I'm going to call him his dad's name, but Jace Richardson, I think might be one of the guys that would get it, but I don't know. I'm looking here real quick, and I'm guessing, isn't Izzo the coach of the year?
Third team, it looks like. So, yeah, Izzo's coach of the year. Jace Richardson, third team, all freshman team.
Yeah, coach of the year. Sixth man of the year was Will Riley for Illinois. Defensive player of the year was Ace Baldwin. Player of the year was Braden Smith. So that's kind of the headliners when it comes to the Big Ten players of the year and the Big Ten teams as well. So Big Ten tournament coming up again on starting Wednesday with the Hawkeyes. Iowa wins, Bobby, and it's Iowa, Illinois on Thursday. You excited?
Yeah. I mean, if you had told me, 6 days ago that I'd be playing the Big Ten tournament, I'm like, no way. So, hey, we've had talked a couple of times about Fran and the Hawkeyes. Hats off to them for taking care of the jobs they needed to get done, and now they're in and you got a shot,
Yeah.
Just got to win a crap ton of games in not a lot of days.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think I'm happy that they went out there, and I think that's cool, but I think the big thing, and we'll talk later about this too, but the future of Fran McCaffery and Nicholas Baer was great in the first segment, kind of given the player side of things. And I know I'm going to get tweets and DMs and all that kind of stuff saying that we were a bunch of homers. And I'm on record as that I probably think it's time to move on from Fran. But I also don't want to tear him down as he leaves. I think he's done a lot of good things at the University of Iowa, leaves as the winningest coach in school history. I don't want to throw everything away just because he's done now. But I think just with longevity and re-energizing the program and all that, it's probably time for a change. So it'll be interesting as we move forward. Go check out the Nicholas Baer interview if you missed that at the start of the show as well. So Bobby, I'm going to let you go because we're actually meeting for lunch at Hungry Hobo. And I'll mention, I'm excited to go to Hungry Hobo. It's one of my favorite places. Hungry Hobo. Good friends of the show. More on that later this week. But Hungry Hobo, very good food. And so wink, wink, nod, nod, sponsor. We'll go. I'll see you at 12:30 over at Hungry Hobo. We'll talk soon.
This is a smart man, guys. He knows what he's doing.
Exactly. Tease. So, all right, buddy. We'll see you soon. All right. That is Bobby Metcalf, former sports writer here in the Quad Cities, a producer over at WQAD, and a guy who knows his stuff about sports. I love having Bobby on to chat with, to bounce things off of as well. So, but that will do it for today's show. Thank you guys for your patience. If you were being patient with me at the beginning, it's funny. I'm using a MiFi today instead of my Mediacom internet. And I got button hooked. I thought we were good with Mediacom, and then it went out again at the start of the show. So we said, time out. Let's start it over. So there's not two parts later on. It's just one good part. People can go listen and all that good stuff. We want to thank Nicholas Baer for being here with us. The Bear Cage, always great to talk to about not just Iowa basketball right now, but big picture, what Fran McCaffery's done. Of course, Nicholas played for Fran for 5 years. So kind of has an in-depth look at what that man is like and how he ticks and all that kind of stuff. Also want to thank Jim Mattson. Great information about the Big Ten tournament, Illinois. They get Merez Johnson back. So go check out Jim Mattson as well. And of course, Bobby Metcalf was just here as well. We got a full show coming up tomorrow. More on that tomorrow. But I do want to let you guys know a couple things that we're working on in the future. We will be joined by Joe Wieskamp on Thursday. Excited about that. So Joe just got back in the States after a great season down in Australia. So we'll talk to him about his professional basketball career, being a dad. He's a dad now. We'll also talk to him about the Iowa Hawkeyes. How much does he watch down there? And all those kind of things and his thoughts on the Iowa basketball program right now. So Joe Wieskamp coming up on Thursday. And then next week, I'm trying to get my dates right. It's either going to be Wednesday or Thursday. Super excited to have Matt Drinkle, head coach at Central Michigan, a Bettendorf grad, Bettendorf native, the Army offensive coordinator recently, taking over at Central Michigan, doing great things, a lot of local connections up at Central Michigan. So really excited to have Matt Drinkle on the show next week as well. We got a lot more things we're working on. Believe it or not, I turn this microphone off and I just start working. I keep working, trying to set stuff up so I can talk for 2 hours every day. God bless me. God bless you guys for even listening. We appreciate that. So thank you guys for watching today. We appreciate it. I'm going to get this stuff up to the podcast form, and I'm going to go eat some hungry hobos. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow on Off the Air.